There is a small coral island in the Persian Gulf, about the size of 1/3 of Manhattan, that roughly 8,000 people call home, and in the next few weeks it may become the single most contested piece of real estate on the planet. Iranians call it the Forbidden Island. Almost no one is allowed to set foot on it without clearance from the Revolutionary Guard. And this week, the President of the United States stood in front of reporters and said, out loud, that America may simply take it. "We may take over Kharg Island," he said. "There's not a thing they can do about it." That sentence is not a threat about the past. It is a countdown for the future. And tonight, this video is not about what already happened, it's about what happens next. Because the United States has now done something it cannot easily walk back, and Iran has drawn a red line it cannot afford to abandon. And those two facts are now colliding in real time over a strip of land that handles 90% of Iran's oil. Welcome back to Alex on World Affairs. I want to do something different in this breakdown. Instead of just narrating the strikes that already landed, I want to war game forward, carefully, with sources, without hype. What is the actual American move on the table right now? What can Iran realistically do about it? And what are the 2 or 3 ways this genuinely ends? Every claim here is tied to a named outlet: Axios, NPR, CNN, Fox News, The Independent, Al Jazeera, the Council on Foreign Relations. And where something is Iran's own claim rather than confirmed fact, I will say so every single time. If forward-looking analysis built this way is what you're here for, a like right now genuinely tells the algorithm to push it to more people who want the same thing. Let me set the board as it actually stands this week, because you cannot forecast the next move without the current position. As of mid-July 2026, the interim ceasefire that Trump and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian signed on June 17th is dead. It collapsed after Iran struck commercial tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. In response, the United States has now run multiple consecutive nights of strikes. CENTCOM confirmed hitting Iranian command centers, air defense sites, missile and drone capabilities, targets in Bandar Abbas, and coastal defense and cruise missile sites on Greater Tunb Island. More than 60 IRGC small boats were destroyed. The U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports is back in full force, and a Curaçao-flagged tanker called the Belma, heading toward Kharg Island in defiance of that blockade, took Hellfire missiles directly into its smokestack, disabled, not sunk, a deliberate message to every other captain thinking about a run at an Iranian port. That's the position. Now here's the move that changes the game. According to Axios, citing 4 sources with knowledge of White House thinking, the Trump administration has been actively considering plans to occupy or blockade Kharg Island, and the internal logic is chillingly specific. One source described it in plain terms. "We need about a month to weaken the Iranians more with strikes, take the island and then get them by the balls and use it for negotiations." 3 separate Marine Expeditionary Units, roughly 2,500 personnel each, have been moved into the region. Pentagon lawyers were reportedly consulted on the legality of a seizure. This is not rhetoric. This is a staged operational plan sitting one presidential signature away from execution. So the first question we have to answer is, why Kharg? Why this island, and not just more airstrikes? Because Kharg is not a military target. It is the financial aorta of the Iranian state. Al Jazeera and the Council on Foreign Relations both lay out the same numbers. Roughly 90% of Iran's crude exports flow through this one island, about 950 million barrels a year, most of it bound for China. It sits about 21 miles off Iran's coast, its deep-water terminals uniquely able to load the supertankers that Iran's shallow mainland ports cannot handle. A declassified CIA document from 1984 called Kharg's facilities the most vital in Iran's oil system. Roughly half of the Iranian government's entire revenue comes from oil and gas. So when American planners talk about taking Kharg, they are not talking about degrading a weapon. They are talking about seizing the cash register. And this is the strategic pivot that makes this moment different from everything that came before. Every prior phase of this war was framed as maritime security, keeping the Strait open, protecting mariners, degrading Iran's ability to threaten shipping. Taking Kharg is a different category entirely. It is not destruction, it is acquisition. Trump himself framed it on Truth Social back in June. The U.S. would take Kharg and other oil infrastructure points and assume total control of their oil and gas markets. He's even drawn the comparison to how Washington has managed Venezuela's oil. Notice what he specifically did not do. He told his own forces, "Don't touch the oil." He struck the island's military facilities in March and April, but deliberately left the pipes intact. In his own words, "We've taken out everything but the pipes. We left the pipes because to rebuild the pipes would take years." That is not the behavior of a man who wants to destroy an asset. That is a man who wants to inherit one, functioning, and redirect where the money flows. So that's the American move on the table. Now let's do the hard part, the part most coverage skips. Let's genuinely wargame what happens next. Because a plan is only as good as the enemy's inability to counter it, and Iran is not without moves. Scenario 1. The United States actually seizes Kharg Island. Here's what the optimistic American case looks like. Marines land, having spent weeks degrading Iran's coastal defenses first. The island's 8,000-odd civilians and its oil terminals come under American operational control. The $500 million a day revenue stream that funds the IIRGC's salaries, its proxy network from Lebanon to Yemen to Iraq, and its weapons programs, is suddenly no longer flowing into Tehran's accounts. As one analyst quoted by CFR put it, the U.S. could kill two birds with one stone, remove an economic lifeline for the regime, and stabilize global energy markets. In this version, Iran is financially strangled into the negotiating position Washington has wanted all along. But now here's the counter scenario, and this is where I have to be honest with you rather than just sell the dramatic version. Retired Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery told Axios something that punctures the entire fantasy of a clean seizure. "If we seize Kharg Island," he said, "they're going to turn off the spigot on the other end. It's not like we control their oil production." Think about that carefully. Kharg is the export terminal, but the oil comes from mainland fields through underwater pipelines that Iran controls. If Iran simply stops pumping, America ends up holding an empty gas station. You'd own the pumps, but not the fuel. And it gets harder. CFR lays out the military nightmare in detail. Kharg sits within easy range of Iranian drones and short-range missiles. Iran's mountainous coast makes it difficult for U.S. radar to detect an incoming assault fast enough to stop it. The nearest major American bases, in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Qatar, are all more than 100 miles away, meaning every resupply ship would have to cross waters infested with Iran's Mosquito fleet of small attack craft, plus potential mines. Iran's parliamentary speaker has already vowed the country would, quote, rain down fire on any U.S. force attempting to land. And there's a legal dimension too. International law only permits attacks on civilian infrastructure when the military advantage outweighs civilian harm. And with 8,000 civilians living on Kharg, an occupation carries real legal and moral stakes. Montgomery's assessment was blunt. It may be smarter to just send destroyers and aircraft to escort tankers through the Strait than to risk American lives taking an island you can't easily hold. So scenario 1 is not the slam dunk the headlines imply. It is a genuine gamble. Scenario 2. Iran escalates outward instead of folding inward. This is the move I think most people are underweighting, and the reporting this week points straight at it. When the U.S. intensified strikes, Iran's Revolutionary Guard issued a warning carried by state media, and I'm labeling this clearly as Iran's stated position, that the U.S., quote, must expect other oil and gas export routes that serve the interests of the United States and its allies to be closed as well. Their exact phrasing: the region's oil and gas exports will either be available to everyone or to no one. That is not just about Hormuz. That is a direct gesture toward the el-Mandeb Strait, the narrow choke point at the mouth of the Red Sea between Yemen and Africa that feeds the Suez Canal. Roughly 10% of the world's oil moves through it, and Iran has a ready-made instrument there, the Houthis in Yemen, who spent 2025 attacking shipping in exactly that corridor. This week, a Houthi political bureau member said on Iranian state TV that if attacks on Yemen continued, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Strait of Hormuz will be closed in an operational alliance. So, Iran's most rational counter to losing Kharg may not be defending Kharg at all. It may be opening a second front on global shipping 1,000 miles away, turning one energy crisis into two, and forcing the world's economies to pressure Washington to stand down. And Iran has drawn its line in unmistakable terms. A spokesman for Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, Ibrahim Zolfagari, warned that Iran would not allow U.S. interference in the Strait of Hormuz under any circumstances, calling it Iran's invincible red line. He threatened that if the U.S. hits Iran's core infrastructure, then all infrastructure in the region will be crushed under the powerful blows of Iran's armed forces. Now, is that real capability, or is it bluster? That's the trillion-dollar question. Former CENTCOM Deputy Commander Vice Admiral Robert Harward told Fox News that the IRGC is not even a paper tiger anymore. They can fire off a drone or two, maybe they've still got some missiles. If Harward is right, the red line is mostly words. But even a degraded Iran retains asymmetric options, mines, small boats, proxies, that don't require a functioning air force to cause chaos. Underestimating a cornered opponent is how wars get longer, not shorter. If you want me to do a full standalone breakdown just on the Bab el-Mandeb second front scenario, the Houthis, the Red Sea, and whether Iran can really close two straits at once, say Red Sea in the comments. If it's the Kharg landing operation itself you want war-gamed in detail, say Kharg. I'll build whichever one you vote for most. Scenario 3. The escalation ladder Trump himself just laid out. This is the one that should worry energy markets most, because Trump put it on the record in an interview with Fox News. Listen to the specificity. Next week it gets really bad for them because next week comes the power plants. Next week comes the bridges. We're going to knock out all their power plants. We're going to knock out all their bridges unless they get to the table and negotiate. That is a stated intent to move from military targets to civilian infrastructure. The lights, the transport, the daily functioning of Iranian society. And Iran's response was to warn that hitting its infrastructure triggers regional retaliation against everyone's infrastructure. So you have both leaders publicly committing to escalation paths that, if either follows through, make de-escalation politically almost impossible. Each side has told its own domestic audience it will not blink. That's how you get locked in. Now let's talk about the piece that touches everyone watching this, no matter where you live: oil. The market has already spoken, and it's nervous. Brent crude closed at a one-month high of $84.95 a barrel this week after the blockade returned, up from around $69 in June. And that's the restrained reaction. Al Jazeera reported Brent jumped more than 5% in a single day just on Trump's Kharg comments. Earlier in this war, when Iran first moved to close Hormuz, Brent spiked past $100 and peaked at $126, the biggest energy disruption since the 1970s oil shocks. So here is the forward-looking danger. The world's shock absorbers are nearly used up. The IMF has warned that the strategic reserves and inventory releases that cushioned the first shock, including a historic 400 million barrel emergency release, have largely been spent. In the IMF's own words, unless inventories are replenished, the world will start from a weaker position when the next shock comes. Translation: if this escalates again, there is far less padding this time. Prices could move faster and higher than before. For anyone in Cameroon, in Europe, in Asia, this is the mechanism by which a fight over one island reaches your fuel pump. Now here's a wrinkle almost nobody is discussing, and it may be the most important forward variable of all: China. Kharg's oil overwhelmingly goes to China. If the United States seizes that terminal and starts dictating where Iranian crude flows, the assumed total control of their oil and gas markets language, Washington isn't just squeezing Tehran, it's inserting itself directly between China and a major energy supplier. That is a completely different level of geopolitical risk than a regional strike campaign. It turns a US-Iran war into a pressure point in the US-China relationship. Reporting notes Trump had to postpone a planned China trip because of this very crisis. So when you're forecasting what happens next, the quiet question hanging over every scenario is, what does Beijing do if America starts rationing the oil that powers Chinese industry? Nobody has a confirmed answer to that yet, and that uncertainty is itself part of why this is so dangerous. Let me also introduce the actor that could tip the balance toward de-escalation: the Gulf Arab states. We already saw their influence this week. Trump floated a 20% reimbursement fee on ships transiting Hormuz and then reversed it within a day. Why? Because, in his own words, he was called by different people, different countries, kings and emirs. Saudi Arabia, the U.A.E., Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, who preferred to replace the fee with investment deals into the United States. That tells you something crucial for forecasting. The Gulf monarchies have real leverage over Washington, and their overriding interest is stability, not a wider war that could put their own oil facilities and desalination plants in Iran's crosshairs. If anyone talks both sides back from the ledge, it's most likely to be Riyadh and Abu Dhabi, not Tehran or Washington. Watch them closely. So let me now put all of this together into the honest forward assessment, what I actually think the range of outcomes looks like, stated plainly, with the uncertainty left intact rather than sanded off. The most likely near-term path is continued strikes plus the blockade, without an immediate Kharg landing. Why? Because the military reality Montgomery described, that you can seize the terminal but not the production, makes an occupation a high-risk move with an uncertain payoff. Escorting tankers is safer and achieves much of the same market-stabilizing goal. So the base case is economic strangulation by blockade, continued degradation of Iran's military, and Kharg held as a loaded threat rather than an executed operation. The island is more useful to Trump as leverage than as territory. The dangerous branch is if Iran follows through on the second front, activating the Houthis to hit the Red Sea while Hormuz is already choked. That doubles the shipping crisis, spikes oil past the levels the world can currently absorb, and pulls in Europe, Asia, and China as economic stakeholders demanding resolution. In that branch, the pressure on Washington to either finish the job decisively or cut a deal becomes enormous. The catastrophic branch is if Trump executes the power plants and bridges escalation, and Iran's invincible red line rhetoric turns out to have teeth, mines in the Strait, mass small boat swarms, missile salvos at Gulf energy infrastructure. That's the path to a genuine regional war, not a contained coercion campaign. And the off-ramp, the branch everyone should be hoping for, runs through the Gulf monarchies brokering a face-saving deal, where Iran quietly allows the Strait to reopen in exchange for Washington holding off on Kharg and easing the blockade. We've already seen small signals of this pressure valve dynamic. An American woman detained in Iran since 2024 was quietly released this week as what Trump called a gesture of goodwill, even as the strikes continued. Diplomacy and bombardment are running on parallel tracks. The question is, which track reaches the destination first? Here is what I want you to actually watch in the coming days, because these are the indicators that will tell you which branch we're on before the headlines catch up. First, tanker traffic through Hormuz. Kepler counted it collapsing to as few as 7 vessels a day this week, down from hundreds normally. If that number keeps falling, Iran's chokehold is holding, and pressure builds toward the dramatic options. If it recovers, the blockade and escort approach is working, and the Kharg gamble becomes less likely. Second, the Red Sea. Any uptick in Houthi activity against shipping is the early warning siren for Scenario 2, the second front. Watch el-Mandeb as closely as Hormuz. Third, whether Trump's power plants and bridges threat actually materializes. If Iranian infrastructure starts going dark, we are on the escalation ladder, and Iran's red line rhetoric gets tested for real. Fourth, the Gulf capitals. If Saudi Arabia, the U.A.E., and Qatar go quiet, brace for escalation. If they're visibly shuttling between Washington and Tehran, an off-ramp is being built. And fifth, oil itself. Brent is the honest scoreboard. It doesn't do politics. If it climbs back toward triple digits, the market is pricing in a wider war, regardless of what any press release says. Let me close with the human reality underneath all the strategy, because it's easy to talk about islands and straits and barrels and forget what sits inside those numbers. Iranian authorities say 35 people have been killed and over 300 wounded in the current wave of strikes. Kepler has confirmed 17 seafarer deaths across this crisis, 17 people who signed an ordinary shipping contract and did not come home. On Kharg Island itself, 8,000 civilians are living on top of what may become a landing zone. In Tehran, a billboard went up this week showing the American president in a coffin. These are not abstractions. This is a war edging toward a decision point that could either be diffused in a Gulf palace or explode across two of the world's most important waterways. And the people who'll pay for the wrong choice are, as always, the ones with the least say in it. The Forbidden Island is loaded. The red line is drawn. The blockade is live. And for the first time in this entire conflict, the next move belongs less to the past than to the next few days. Which branch we take is not written yet, and that's exactly why it's worth watching this one closely, rather than trusting whichever version shouts loudest. If this forward-looking, sourced approach is what you want more of, where I wargame what happens next instead of just narrating what already did, then subscribing is the single most direct way to get the next confirmed development before an exaggerated version of it finds you somewhere else. Tell me in the comments which scenario you think is most likely: the Kharg seizure, the Red Sea second front, or the Gulf-brokered off-ramp. I read them, and the most requested one becomes the next deep dive. I'll see you there.